Great. What's your name?
Jamal Roberts,
Where are you from?
Meridian, Mississippi.
What do
I love
you...
being in Nashville.
As a journalist digging deeper into this journey, I witnessed the stark contrast in Jamal Roberts' transformation. Picture this: a young man arriving at the American Idol auditions with nothing but an old guitar and unshakable confidence, managing to bring the judges and audience to their feet in thunderous applause, only for his story to end in headlines of sorrow that shocked the entertainment world. This is the cruel irony. A contestant with extraordinary vocal talent who was once tipped as a potential champion, yet is remembered more for the tragedy that followed him. The world watched as Jamal's journey turned from euphoria to despair, from hope to heartbreak, a narrative rarely shown on television screens but all too real behind the scenes. As a reporter, I must state plainly that this is the kind of story that breaks hearts. Jamal Roberts did not only leave behind beautiful music, he also left a wound in the memory of American Idol that will forever remind us of the fragility of dreams and the weight of human suffering behind the applause. As a reporter piecing together the fragments of Jamal Roberts' life, the first thing that stands out is his humble background and the way music became both his refuge and his weapon of hope. Jamal was not born into privilege. He came from a modest family where financial struggles were part of everyday life. Yet from an early age, it was clear that he possessed a rare gift, a voice filled with raw emotion capable of sending shivers down the spine of anyone who listened. He first found his stage in local churches where his voice echoed with sincerity, later participating in small community contests where he often stole the spotlight. But Jamal was not only defined by his talent. He carried within him an unyielding determination to use music as a means to rise above his circumstances and bring light to his family's struggles. Friends and neighbors recall a boy who, despite hardships, always smiled, always found ways to inspire others with his songs. His identity was deeply tied to his role as a son who wanted to make his mother proud, as a young man who saw music not just as entertainment but as salvation. This foundation of sincerity, hardship, and unwavering hope was what he carried with him when he stepped onto the much larger stage of American Idol, unaware that his journey there would later be overshadowed by heartbreak that shook the world. Covering the story of Jamal's audition journey is like narrating the rise of an underdog who suddenly glimpses the stars. When Jamal decided to audition for American Idol, he did so not with flashy clothes or expensive instruments, but with his old guitar that bore the marks of years of practice, and a heart full of dreams. At the audition, what unfolded before the cameras and the judges was nothing short of magical. As soon as he began to sing, the room transformed. Silence gave way to awe, and within moments the panel of judges were exchanging glances of amazement. By the end of his performance, they were on their feet, clapping, and even expressing words of encouragement that hinted at Jamal being a once-in-a-generation talent. His video clip quickly spread across social media, where viewers resonated with both his humility and the sheer power of his voice. For many, Jamal symbolized the possibility that greatness can emerge from the most unlikely places. The audition was not just a ticket into the competition. It was the validation of every sacrifice he had made, every moment of self-doubt he had endured. For his family, especially his ailing mother, it was a moment of pride beyond words. As a reporter, I observed that this was the turning point when Jamal's story stopped being personal and became public property, a narrative that millions began to follow, invest in emotionally, and root for. While audiences saw only the brilliance of his voice and the glow of his smile, my investigation as a reporter uncovered the heavier burdens Jamal carried behind the scenes. He was not just a talented contestant on a reality show. He was also the backbone of his family, a young man who juggled multiple responsibilities while chasing a dream that seemed almost impossible. At home, Jamal faced economic struggles that forced him to take odd jobs to support his household. More painfully, he carried the weight of his mother's chronic illness, often serving as both caretaker and emotional anchor for her. This dual life, hopeful performer by day, struggling provider by night, was not something viewers could easily see, but it shaped the authenticity of every note he sang. When Jamal performed on stage, the emotion was not manufactured. It came from a place of lived pain and perseverance. Those who knew him personally described his singing as an extension of his soul, a diary in melody form. As I reviewed his story, it became clear that his artistry could not be separated from his hardships. His golden voice was not just the result of natural talent but of years of resilience, sacrifice, and love. It was this mixture of beauty and struggle that made Jamal unique, and tragically, it was also this weight of responsibility and sorrow that foreshadowed the tragedy to come. As a reporter following Jamal's rise, I can attest that his performances on the American Idol stage were among the most memorable of the season, not because they were technically flawless, but because they carried a weight of sincerity that is rare in televised competitions. Each week he stepped onto the stage, guitar in hand or sometimes simply standing in front of a microphone, and delivered renditions that left both judges and audiences visibly moved. His voice, rich with soul and tinged with the rawness of lived experience, brought tears to the eyes of seasoned judges who had heard thousands of contestants before him. The audience at home responded in kind, flooding social media with praise and dubbing him the voice that tells a story. His growing fanbase began to see him not just as a competitor but as a vessel of hope, someone whose triumphs felt collective, whose struggles were shared by all watching. The stage became a safe space for Jamal, a place where the burdens he carried in private could be released through song, turning personal pain into universal art. As I reviewed footage of these performances, the through line was clear. Jamal wasn't merely performing for fame. He was communicating something deeper, using music to remind the world that beauty can emerge from brokenness. These moments of connection, fleeting yet profound, are now remembered as the most radiant highlights of his journey, tragically contrasted by the darkness that followed. While Jamal's journey on stage seemed to be heading toward inevitable triumph, behind the curtain signs of trouble were beginning to surface, and as a reporter, I noticed how the narrative slowly shifted from pure admiration to concern. Several accounts from crew members and fellow contestants revealed that Jamal had started showing signs of fatigue. His once energetic presence between rehearsals was replaced with moments of visible exhaustion. At times he would clutch his chest or sit quietly in a corner, trying to mask discomfort behind his trademark smile. Reports began circulating that he was dealing with health issues, though he never confirmed them publicly, always insisting that he was fine and determined to keep performing. Those close to him knew that he was pushing himself beyond safe limits, motivated by a desire not to disappoint his family, particularly his mother whose pride in him was immeasurable. Observers could sense that the physical strain was beginning to mirror his emotional weight, and whispers of "something's not right" grew louder. Yet, Jamal refused to let the dream slip away, embodying the classic story of a fighter who continues despite the odds. As a journalist, I find this period both inspiring and haunting, because while it demonstrated his resilience, it also foreshadowed the devastating collapse that would later shake his supporters and the wider public. The true turning point in Jamal Roberts' tragedy, which I reported on extensively, was the death of his mother in the middle of the competition. This was not just a personal loss, it was the breaking of the emotional pillar that had supported him through every hardship. Jamal's mother had been his source of inspiration, the one who encouraged his passion for music and sacrificed to ensure he could pursue it. When news broke that she had passed away after a long illness, Jamal was devastated. Yet, incredibly, he chose to continue performing on the show, delivering songs that now carried an even heavier emotional weight. His first performance after her passing was described by critics as one of the rawest and most heartbreaking moments in American Idol history. Judges and audience members wept openly as Jamal sang, his voice trembling but powerful, channeling grief into art in a way that transcended competition. For viewers, it was both inspiring and heartbreaking, a moment where music became a direct window into the soul of a young man grappling with unimaginable pain. As a reporter, I recognized this as the pivotal point when Jamal's story stopped being just about talent and became a testament to human resilience in the face of loss. Yet at the same time, it raised uncomfortable questions. How much pressure can one person bear? Could this relentless pursuit of a dream amid grief have accelerated the tragedy that ultimately followed? These are the haunting reflections that linger whenever we recall that heartbreaking performance. As a reporter analyzing Jamal's journey after his mother's death, it became increasingly clear that the mounting pressure and emotional scars were taking a visible toll on him, even if he tried hard to mask it. Contestants and staff observed a change in his demeanor. His once bright eyes now seemed heavy with sorrow, his conversations quieter, and his energy noticeably diminished. While on stage he continued to sing with remarkable power, those who watched closely could sense that his performances were now driven more by pain than by joy. The dual weight of carrying his family's struggles and coping with grief while competing on one of the world's biggest stages created an almost unbearable burden. Mental health experts later commented that the kind of loss Jamal endured, compounded by the relentless demands of a televised competition, could easily push a young person into emotional collapse. Yet, Jamal never publicly spoke of giving up. Instead, he wore his grief as armor, convincing others that he could manage. Fans admired his courage, but behind the admiration lay an unsettling truth. The applause, the lights, and the support could not erase the silent battles raging inside him. As a reporter, I must note that this period of Jamal's life highlights the often overlooked reality that fame and recognition cannot protect someone from the crushing weight of grief, and in his case, it may have deepened the cracks that tragedy had already carved into his soul. The inevitable breaking point came sooner than anyone anticipated, and as a journalist, I remember vividly the day the shocking news spread. Jamal Roberts had been found dead. The announcement rippled through media outlets, social platforms, and fan communities like a wave of disbelief and grief. Initial reactions were of denial. How could someone so full of life, talent, and potential be gone so suddenly? Soon after, tributes began pouring in from all corners. Judges from American Idol released heartfelt statements, fellow contestants expressed their devastation, and fans flooded social media with videos of his performances, memorial posts, and personal reflections on how Jamal's voice had touched their lives. The news wasn't just entertainment coverage. It was headline news, carried by networks and newspapers globally, signaling that Jamal's tragedy had transcended the show and struck a chord with humanity at large. As I reported the story, the atmosphere was one of stunned silence in the industry, a reminder that even the brightest stars can be extinguished too soon. The tragedy forced uncomfortable conversations about the pressures young artists face, the lack of sufficient mental health support in entertainment, and the heavy cost of chasing dreams on public stages. Jamal's death became not only a loss for the competition but a symbolic moment, underscoring the fragility of life behind the spectacle of celebrity. The public's response to Jamal Roberts' passing was overwhelming, and as a reporter tracking the reaction, I saw a level of engagement and mourning rarely witnessed for a reality show contestant. Fans organized vigils, created tribute videos, and flooded comment sections with messages of love, sorrow, and gratitude. Many posted covers of the songs he performed on American Idol, treating each rendition as both a farewell and a celebration of his artistry. On Twitter and Instagram, hashtags bearing his name trended for days, uniting strangers from across the globe who felt connected by the shared grief of losing someone who had inspired them through music. Even celebrities outside the Idol sphere joined in, with prominent artists acknowledging Jamal's talent and lamenting the loss of a promising life. Beyond the sadness, fans also turned their grief into advocacy, calling for stronger mental health support for contestants on competitive shows and highlighting the unseen challenges faced by performers under intense public scrutiny. As a journalist covering these reactions, I observed how Jamal's tragedy evolved into a movement, with his name becoming a rallying cry for compassion, awareness, and change. The collective mourning demonstrated that Jamal had left a lasting imprint far beyond the Idol stage. His story had become a mirror reflecting society's responsibility toward young dreamers. In examining Jamal Roberts' legacy as a reporter, it is evident that his story will endure not only because of the tragedy of his death but because of the inspiration he left behind. His voice continues to live in recordings, in the memories of his performances, and in the hearts of those who were moved by his sincerity. More than that, Jamal's journey represents the resilience of the human spirit. He chased his dream against all odds, carried his family's burdens, and even in grief, he gave the world music that was deeply authentic. The lessons of his story resonate across generations, about the importance of mental health, about the hidden struggles behind public success, and about the transformative power of music to connect and heal. Fans and fellow artists alike now regard him not just as a contestant who didn't finish his journey, but as a symbol of bravery, vulnerability, and truth in artistry. His short life has become a lasting reminder that sometimes the most impactful legacies are not built on victories or trophies but on the honesty of one's journey and the depth of one's humanity. For those who continue to sing his songs, watch his performances, or share his story, Jamal Roberts remains alive, etched permanently in the emotional fabric of the audience he touched. His legacy is heartbreak, yes, but it is also hope, a reminder that even in tragedy, beauty can survive. And so, as I close this report, I must acknowledge that Jamal Roberts' story is one of the most heartbreaking chapters in the history of American Idol. His rise and fall remind us that behind every performance there are human struggles unseen by the cameras, battles fought silently until they overwhelm. Jamal may no longer walk among us, but his story, his voice, and his resilience continue to speak. Thank you for watching. Find other interesting videos in our channel's playlist.